How did you deal with loss? Faith. You know, I'm Irish, I'm Catholic. The church has been a big part of my life.
How did you handle loss? Creencia. You know, I'm from Ireland, and I'm Catholic. The church has been very important in my life. Pierce Brosnan just shared surprising news that took everyone by surprise. At 71, the former James Bond is getting ready for the worst. His first wife passed away from ovarian cancer at the age of 43. Then his daughter passed away from the same illness at 41. Now something has occurred that is making him confront his greatest fear. The man who played the toughest spy in the world is facing a fight he can't win. And what he plans to do next has everyone concerned. Pierce Brosnan was born on May 16, 1953, in Drogheda, Ireland. He was born with very little. No money, no family history, and as it turned out, no father. His dad, a carpenter named Thomas, vanished from Pierce's life so early that he couldn't remember his face, voice, or even being there. It was as if he had disappeared completely. His mother, May, had to bear the responsibility. She worked as a nurse, keeping a life that was starting to break down together. But in 1957, she had to make a difficult decision. She went to London to look for a job, leaving her 4-year-old son Pierce in Ireland. She had no other choice. Still, that choice created another gap in Pierce's young life. What was supposed to be a brief time apart ended up lasting 7 long years. During that time, he moved between family members, first staying with his grandparents in Navan, then with an uncle and aunt in Trim. Every new house brought different rules, new schools, and unknown people. Pierce never stayed long enough to feel like he was part of anything. He learned to stay quiet, to watch, to get by. Él siempre era el chico nuevo, siempre el extraño. Los maestros notaron algo en él. He was smart but quiet, always staring out the window, and not really engaged. Luego todo cambió in 1964. He moved to Greenock, Scotland at 11 years old. Su madre se había vuelto a casar. Her new husband, William Carmichael, had a job at a factory. He was nice and understanding. For a boy who had grown up without stability, this new home brought different feelings. Pierce felt conflicted. He felt glad to see his mother again, but he was also angry. And now she had someone new in her life, a man who was not his father. Aun así, William lo intentó. He taught Pierce little things, like fishing, fixing things, and how to trust again. Él nunca presionó demasiado. Él nunca intentó reemplazar a nadie. One day William brought Pierce to the movies. It was 1964, and the film was Goldfinger. Sean Connery, como James Bond, brilló en la pantalla. Esa noche lo cambió todo. To Pierce, Bond was more than just a character. He was completely different from how Pierce had felt. La conexión era fuerte. Bond was sure of himself. Bond was in charge. And Pierce wanted to be exactly like that. At 16, Pierce took another brave step. He left school in London, and signed up at Saint Escuela de Arte de Martín. He had no money or a clear plan, only a love for painting. He admired the art of Francis Bacon and Lucian Freud. At that time, he wasn't even thinking about acting. He concentrated on illustration and design. He lived on toast and tea, while his classmates came from richer families. He was set on showing that he fit in, but fate had different ideas. In 1971, while studying art, Pierce accidentally found a theater workshop in South London. He watched a fire eater perform. Instead of leaving, Pierce asked if he could give it a try. That one unexpected moment changed his future. The group saw something in him, a combination of courage and a natural presence. They asked him to participate. He had no acting experience before, but now everything began to make sense. Like Bond, he had stepped into a world filled with danger and allure. Not long after, Pierce became part of the Drama Centre London. For 3 years, from 1973 to 1976, he worked harder than ever. The school was demanding. More than 60% of students left school. The teachers were strict. They took students apart to build them up again. Algunos se fueron. Algunos tuvieron crisis. Pero Pierce siguió adelante. Él hizo trabajos extras. Él hizo duo a Shakespeare. He also practiced mime and circus performances. It cost £1,20 a year, a huge amount at that time. Pero Pierce nunca se rindió. In 1976, he received his first big opportunity with a stage play called Wait Until Dark. It was a thrilling movie, and Pierce portrayed a character that made viewers uneasy. The director noticed something cold and disturbing in him. That advantage worked. A year later, he took on a daring role in a challenging Tennessee Williams play, The Red Devil Battery Sign. The play didn't do well in America, but Pierce made it successful in London. Critics admired his performance. People started to notice. Luego se pasó al cine. In 1950, he had a quick role in The Mirror Cracked with Elizabeth Taylor. Él estuvo en pantalla por menos de 30 segundos. Él ganó solo 50 libras, pero era un comienzo. That same year he acted in The Long Good Friday, alongside Helen Mirren and Bob Hoskins. He played a small role as an IRA character. The movie didn't succeed at first, but over time, it became a cult classic, and there was Pierce, quietly working on his way to fame. In 1982, Pierce Brosnan was not very famous outside of the UK. He had done some TV and theatre work in Britain, but nothing big. Then something surprising occurred. He tried out for a minor role in a new show named Remington Steele. Not in a main role, but as someone who has been murdered. That could have been it. One scene and finished. But NBC's casting director noticed something special in him. They noticed charm, a strong presence, and something attractive. They called him back, not for a small role, but for the main part. That choice changed everything. The original idea for Remington Steele was a wise American con artist in his 50s. Brosnan was 29 years old, young Irish, and not well known in the United States. Still, the producers decided to take a risk. More than 200 actors tried out for the roles, many of whom are famous Americans. Brosnan was given the role. His Irish accent nearly lost him the role. Executives worried that American viewers wouldn't be okay with a foreign main character. But once he took on the role, he became Remington Steele. He was cool, smooth and mysterious, and the audiences loved him for it. El programa se estrenó el 1 de octubre de 1982. Right from the start, it was a success, becoming NBC's second most popular new show. In its first year, 15.6 million people watched each week. However, it wasn't easy. The show was cancelled after its fourth season in 1986. Fans were very angry. The studio decided to do something different. It returned for one final run. The last episode was shown in February 1987, and was watched by almost 26 million people. That's the kind of farewell most shows only hope for. At its height, Remington Steele was generating more than $50 million a year for NBC just from ads. International sales increased by another $200 million. The show was broadcast in over 80 countries, and something unusual occurred in America. Between 1983 and 1987, requests for private detective licenses increased by 340%. Brosnan's smart and calm character clearly resonated with people. However, success had a cost. Just 2 months after the show began, critics were already claiming Brosnan should be the next James Bond. In January 1983, Entertainment Weekly named him the most Bond-like actor since Sean Connery. A few months later, Bond producer Albert Covey Broccoli got in touch. Él estaba mirando. He was curious. By 1984, the guesswork reached its peak. NBC embraced it. Their marketing suggested Brosnan's secret agent style. TV Guide featured a cover, asking if he would be the next 007. Even Ian Fleming's widow, Anne Fleming, stated publicly that Brosnan resembled and behaved just like what her husband imagined for Bond. Meanwhile, Brosnan was receiving important praise from critics. That same year, he was nominated for a Golden Globe for his performance in Nancy Astor. This was just his second big role on television. He was competing against legends like Anthony Hopkins and John Gielgud. Brosnan came very close to winning. People in the industry said he lost by only 3 votes. His performance impressed even the actual Astor family, who had initially been against the series. His Bond journey was not going to be easy. La mayoría de la gente cree que los ofrecieron El papel de Bond por primera vez en 1985. Incorrect. He was considered for the role in 1983 for A View to a Kill. Roger Moore was unsure about making another film, and Brosnan was ready to step in. He met Broccoli while filming For Your Eyes Only, where Brosnan's wife, Cassandra Harris, played a small part. Broccoli saw him, and said, "If he can act, he's my guy." But the studio got scared. They offered Moore a lot of money, more than $3.5 million, to come back. Brosnan's shot was postponed again. Then in 1986, something even more serious happened. Remington Steele was cancelled. But when people heard that Brosnan might be the next Bond, the show's ratings went up. NBC spotted an opportunity. They took back the cancellation, and decided to make a brief fifth season. Brosnan was still in a contract. That meant he couldn't make a Bond film. It was rough. The attention he received from being connected to Bond was turned against him. He couldn't move. While he completed the last season of Remington Steele, Bond producers continued their work. Timothy Dalton was selected for the part. That moment changed everything for Brosnan, and for Bond. Dalton era amigo de Brosnan. Losing the role was painful, but he had to keep smiling. Dalton's portrayal of Bond was more serious and harsh. No fue bien. License to Kill didn't do well in the United States, earning only $34 million. Brosnan observed from the sidelines. He knew he could have chosen something else. Between 1986 and 1994, known as the lost years by fans, Brosnan didn't go away. He made good choices. In The Fourth Protocol, 1987, he portrayed a British spy in a Cold War suspense film. No era Bond, pero estuvo cerca. He was the lead in Nomads, 1986, demonstrating his versatility in a supernatural part. He even starred in Diet Coke commercials, where he portrayed a suave hero in a tuxedo, a clear reference to Bond. Pierce Brosnan met Cassandra Harris in the late 1970s. She was already an actress, born as Sandra Colleen Waits in Sydney in 1948. When they met, there was an immediate connection. Pierce didn't intend to fall in love. He simply thought she was beautiful. Pero pasó algo. Antes de mucho tiempo, estaban viviendo juntos en Wimbledon. Se casaron el 27 de diciembre de 1980. Cassandra had just been through a tough divorce, so this new beginning was very important to her. She had 2 children from that marriage, Charlotte and Christopher. Pierce acted quickly. He entered their lives as if he had always been a part of them. Cassandra's ex-husband, Dermot Harris, died from a heart attack. In 1986, Pierce officially became the legal parent of the children. Le quitaron su nombre, pero fue más que solo documentos. Pierce didn't have a dad while growing up, so he focused all his energy on being the father he wished he had. He once said, "I wasn't a father, I was simply Pierce. Y luego me convertí en papá." In 1983, Cassandra and Pierce became parents to a son. Lo llamaron Sean. Eso los convirtió en cinco. Life felt complete and cozy. The kids were friendly, and Pierce's career was improving. Pero la familia era lo más important. He wanted to give them the love he missed when he was growing up. He ensured they felt safe, happy, and acknowledged. Something special happened in 1981. Cassandra was chosen to act in the Bond movie, For Your Eyes Only. She was a Bond girl before Pierce even thought about being 007. While she was filming, Pierce met the Bond producer, Albert Broccoli. Cassandra had faith in him. She encouraged him to pursue the role. Broccoli was impressed, and saw Pierce as the next Bond. Pero Pierce estaba atrapado and encontrado con Remington Steele. He wasn't able to take the role, not at this time. Cassandra wanted it for him very much, but she never saw it happen. In 1987, everything was different. While Pierce was shooting The Deceivers in India, Cassandra began to feel very ill. They returned to London by plane. The news was bad. Ella tenía cáncer de ovario. Not just a little bump or something simple to fix. Estaba por todas partes. The diagnosis was a shock. Pierce said, "From day one, we had a fight on our hands. What came next were 4 tough years." Cassandra had 8 surgeries. Ella tuvo un año y medio de quimioterapia. Se le cayó el cabello. Her body grew weaker. Pero ella se mantuvo fuerte. She asked about every treatment. Ella tomó sus propias decisiones. She confronted everything with bravery. Pierce stayed with her the entire time. He referred to himself as the quiet party, always around but often powerless. Their son, Sean, a young boy, would sometimes play pretend as the doctor. It was very sad. Cassandra's mom had passed away from the same cancer. No fue solo mala suerte, fue genético. That made things even worse. Ahora también tenían que preocuparse por Charlotte. Pierce started promoting early testing and awareness. Cassandra's situation was hopeless, but he wanted to assist others. In December 1991, her time was up. One night, while they were in bed, Pierce was very sad. Cassandra whispered, "Please, darling, don't worry. It's simply a life coming to an end." She remained the strong one, even at the end. She didn't want machines or hospitals. She wanted respect. She confronted death in her own way. Ella falleció el 28 de diciembre de 1991. She was just 43. Pierce was with her son Christopher. Charlotte, who was studying acting in London, was on the phone. Navidad acaba de pasar. While others were celebrating, Pierce was organizing a funeral. Then came the hardest part, telling 8-year-old Sean that his mother was gone. Pierce suddenly had to take care of 3 kids by himself. Sean tenía 8 años, Christopher tenía 19 años, y Charlotte tenía 20 años. He said it was the first time he had truly felt sad. It was too much for him, but he continued on. He said that Cassandra shaped his identity. "She's always a part of me." He later said, Pierce Brosnan was chosen to play James Bond in 1994. What made it even more personal was his wife, Cassandra Harris. She was a Bond girl in For Your Eyes Only in 1981. At that time, she had cancer, but she encouraged him to audition for the role again. She hoped to see him become 007 before she died. When he finally got it, it was more than just a win. It was a mix of sadness and success. His first role in GoldenEye was a crucial turning point, not only for him, but for the entire Bond franchise. The film had already gone through several directors, and its budget had increased to $60 million. AMGM was almost out of money. If it had not worked, Bond would have stopped right then. But GoldenEye earned $353 million around the globe. That tank chase scene through St. Petersburg cost $8 million by itself. Brosnan performed 90% of his own stunts, including a scary bungee jump from a 220-meter dam in Switzerland. It was so dangerous that insurance companies wouldn't provide coverage for it. The film came out exactly 30 years after Sean Connery's last official Bond movie, Diamonds Are Forever. No era solo coda película. It was a rebirth. Ya funcionó. Nintendo made the GoldenEye 007 video game because of it. That game changed the industry and introduced Bond to a new generation. The success continued beyond that. Brosnan's next 3 Bond movies earned a total of $1.238 billion. However, those victories came with personal sacrifice. When Tomorrow Never Dies came out in 1997, he was still mourning Cassandra's death from 6 years before. He channeled that pain into the character. A chase scene in Saigon cost $12 million to make. They had to create a whole Vietnamese street in England just for that. The World Is Not Sufficient. In 1999, Bond had his longest opening scene, lasting 14 minutes. It also featured Bond's first main female villain. They even created a real oil pipeline explosion with 120 gallons of gasoline producing a fireball that could be seen from 10 miles away. Then came Die Another Day in 2002. It marked Bond's 40th anniversary, and almost exhausted Brosnan. A parasurfing trick went wrong, and he was dragged under by 30-foot waves. He ended up in the hospital because of hypothermia. That same movie included a $300 Fin Aston Martin, and a large ice palace in Iceland, made from 1,000 tons of ice. Hero Brosnan no solo coda era un gran éxito en taquilla. Él ganó el Saturn Award al mejor actor en 1996.
What made it surprising was that he won against Sean Connery, who was also nominated that year for The Rock. It was the first time that the current Bond was better than a previous one. Even Steven Spielberg called Brosnan after GoldenEye to offer him the part of Indiana Jones. Brosnan refused the role to remain loyal to Bond. That choice probably cost him $50 million, but it demonstrated his commitment to the role. Everything looked great. Lego Jago 2004. He was in the Bahamas making the movie After the Sunset, La Vida Era Buena. He had acted in 4 Bond movies that made $1.4 billion. He was in excellent condition, preparing and suggesting ideas for Bond 21. Then at 2:47 p.m., his phone started ringing. The producers let him go. Sin advertencia, sin explicación. The call was 47 seconds long. You were an amazing James Bond. Thank you very much. Adios. That was all. What made it colder was how successful his films had been. Die Another Day earned $431.9 million, which was the highest amount for a Bond movie at that time. However, the producers had already made the decision to cast a younger Bond. They waited until he was by himself and defenseless to strike. In only 3 days, everything transformed. 3 movie deals are gone. The studios withdrew. Internal emails later revealed that he was viewed as too locked into his role and difficult to cast in different projects. His asking price went down from $12 million to $3 million. He had to dismiss 12 staff members. He fell into a serious depression. His children saw him cry when the Casino Royale trailer was released. That moment affected him deeply. They gave his role to someone else without saying goodbye. It turns out that the producers were testing other actors for 2 years while pretending they still had faith in him. That betrayal hurt more than losing the job. However, there was another event occurring in 1994, just a few months before he officially became Bond. Algo inesperado sucedió. On April 8 at 7:30 p.m., at a beach party in Cabo San Lucas, he met Keely Shea Smith. She was a journalist, and they connected immediately. She didn't care about the fame. Pocodo ya te gustaba, que ella le gustaba quien era él no lo que hacía. Ellos hablaron hasta las 2 a.m. He took her to meet his kids in 3 weeks. Ellos se mudó 6 meses después. Their bond was genuine. Years later, that relationship became the one thing he could rely on, when everything else was falling apart. In 2001, they got married in Ireland. The ceremony cost $2.3 million. It took place at Ballintuber Abbey, a church that had been in operation for almost 800 years. The guest list was small, with only 100 people, including Judi Dench and Liam Neeson. Brosnan wore a classic Irish kilt. He cried when he saw Keely come down the aisle. Charlotte Brosnan died in 2013 at the age of 41, but her death was not only a tragedy. This was the 3rd time this same nightmare occurred in the same family. Her grandmother passed away from ovarian cancer, Cassandra Harris. Her mother passed away at only 43. Y ahora, Charlotte. She was 2 years younger than her mother when the illness caused her death. Charlotte had battled strongly. For 3 years she fought the cancer that grew silently inside her. Ovarian cancer is known as the silent killer for a reason. By the time it is discovered, it is often too late. In fact, 75% of women are diagnosed only in the later stages, where the chance of survival falls from 90% to as low as 20% to 30%. Charlotte nació in 1971. She lost her biological father, Dermot Harris, and was adopted by Pierce Brosnan in 1986. He gave her his name, his love, and a special place in his heart. But no amount of love could stop the genetic curse that had already taken away 2 generations. For Pierce, it wasn't only about losing his daughter. It was like seeing history repeat itself in the worst way. In 1991, he lost his wife Cassandra to the same illness. She had 8 surgeries and underwent chemotherapy for 18 months. He described it as life-changing to see someone you love disappear little by little. It changes your whole perspective. He said, "You're facing death. Todo cambia." 22 years later, the same thing happened to Charlotte. At the 2014 Stand Up to Cancer fundraiser, Pierce shared his feelings on stage. He said, "I held the kind, strong, beautiful hand of my first wife, Cassie, as ovarian cancer took her life far too early. Last year, I held the hand of my amazing and funny daughter, Charlotte, before she also died from this terrible inherited disease. It wasn't only new sadness, it was trauma once more, deep, dark, and known." One of Pierce's close friends, Ron Roylance, put it well: Charlotte's illness brought a darkness. Pierce was going through the entire scary experience again. Il había encontrado el amor todo this. He married Keely Shea Smith in 2001, and began a new family with 2 sons, Dylan and Paris. But when Charlotte fell ill, all the memories returned, every helpless moment. Royland said he was extremely upset, but even during all that pain Healy stayed with him, keeping him strong. Then came the most painful turn of events. Charlotte se casó. On June 14, 2003, she said "I do" to her longtime partner, Alex Smith. 2 semanas después, él se había ido. On Friday, June 28, 2003, she died in London at 2 de la tarde. She was with Alex, her 2 children, 15-year-old Isabella and 8-year-old Lucas, and her brothers, Christopher and Sean. She was born in London, studied acting there, and that is where her life ended. Pierce gave a brief statement after her death. Charlotte faced her cancer with grace and kindness, bravery, and dignity. Her strength was incredible. Even in her last weeks, she planned her wedding. She wanted her kids to understand that love was still important. Isabella was 15 when she lost her mother, just as Charlotte had been when Cassandra was diagnosed. Lucas tenía 8 años, la misma edad que tenía Sean, el hijo de Pierce, cuando murió su madre. The echo of history was nearly too accurate, too harsh. Friends said Charlotte was the type of mom who dedicated all her effort to her children. Her friend Claire Beckwith recalled her saying that she no longer cared about acting. "Esa es mi familia," dijo ella. "I want to give them as much love as possible." In just 2 weeks, Alex Smith went from being a newlywed to a widower. Now, he had to take care of 2 kids, who had just seen their mother vanish. Pierce, who was now a grandfather, stepped in feeling sad again, but also trying to be strong for those who remain. However, not all of Charlotte's brothers and sisters managed to cope. Christopher Brosnan faced a serious setback. Cassandra died in 1991, and at that time, he was just 19 years old. He had potential. He worked on Pierce's Bond movies like Tomorrow Never Dies, and The World Is Not Enough, but the pain reached him. In 1996, he received a fine of £1,000 for driving under the influence. A year later, he was jailed for 3 months for doing it again. Then drugs arrived. GHB and heroin. He fell outside a London club and went into a coma. In 2012, when he was 32 years old, he was arrested again for having heroin. He had become involved in the Brixton drug scene, far from Hollywood and far from the person he once was. In Junio de 2024, Christopher hizo su primera aparición pública en 20 años. Paparazzi saw him outside a grocery store in London. He looked thin, was alone, and was 51 years old. At the same time, Keely Shea Smith was dealing with her own struggle. For years the tabloids made fun of her weight. They presented pictures that showed how she looked before and after having children, comparing her young body to her appearance after becoming a mother. Trolls filled the internet. Pierce didn't accept it. He supported her in a now well-known post. "I love all the curves of her body. To me she is the most beautiful woman, and also because she gave birth to our 5 children." Keely, now 61 years old, lost 100 pounds in 2024. No surgery, no quick fixes, just walking, swimming, healthy foods, and patience. Lo más importante es el respeto a uno mismo. She expressed her gratitude online for everything her body has done and achieved in 60 years. In August 2024, she and Pierce marked 23 years of marriage, and 31 years since they first met. Despite tragedy, scandal and sadness, they remained strong. On their anniversary, Pierce called her "He's everything." Keely said, "You are the best, most beautiful, kindest person I have ever known." They were recently spotted at George Clooney's Broadway debut in April 2025, Keely wearing a black lace dress. Pierce remains charming and steady. Still, he continues to work, Él fue elegido como Dr. Fate appears in Black Adam in 2022. The director mentioned that Pierce combined strength and calmness perfectly. At 71, he remains one of the coolest guys in Hollywood, but more importantly, he's a fighter. He has taken his pain and turned it into something meaningful. He is now an advocate, and has been a UNICEF ambassador since 2001. He has participated in marches with Greenpeace, opposed nuclear testing, and raised funds for cancer awareness. He once skipped the Golden Eye premiere in France to protest against nuclear weapons. When Charlotte was ill, he said he would do anything, call anyone, go anywhere, and even beg if necessary. He only wanted her to be alive. He wasn't able to save her, but he's still working to help others.